As of right now, I am 45 years old, but I have only really lived 19 years. Since I was young, my life would jump forward every time something terrible would happen to me. The first time it happened was when I was 6 years old. That is the year my father was involved in a hit and run. I remember wanting to cry, but before I knew it, I felt like all of my grief was gone. I felt at peace, but I felt extremely different. My mother came into my room and told me to get ready for school. Somehow, I knew where all of my clothes were, but they felt like they were much too big to fit me. When I put my shirt and pants on, I realized they fit me perfectly. I went into the bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth, but when I walked in, I saw my own reflection. I was a lot taller than before, and my face looked a lot more different. When I ate my breakfast, my mother dropped me off at a middle school. After 30 seconds of confusion, I suddenly knew which class to go to and who my friends were. I knew that I was in 7th grade since I was now 12. I knew that I had a bully, but he was never really that bad. His name was James, and he was always yelled at by his mother when she picked him up from school. My friend's name was Brian, and he was obsessed with his music. Everything was okay with my life for the next 2 years. I met my first crush, but she never liked me back. Brian and I grew closer every day since we had the same classes, and James ended up moving away. Everything was fine until my 14th birthday, when my grandfather had a heart attack in our living room while I was blowing out my candles. After my mother received a call telling her that my grandfather didn't make it, I started to cry. Just moments later, I opened my eyes to find myself sitting at a red light. I looked to my left, expecting to see my mother driving, but found a steering wheel in front of me instead. That is when I had my first meltdown. I screamed at the mirrors that showed a face of a growing man, and I punched the steering wheel until my hands filled with pain. I looked outside the car window when I managed to calm down and realized that everything was different. I knew I was in the same city I always lived in, but there were stores I never even heard of. The park I used to go to all of the time was torn down and replaced with a mattress store. When I heard the car behind me honking, I started to drive to my house. I don't know how I knew how to drive, but somehow I knew what to do, and it felt completely natural. I got to my house to see an old lady sitting outside the house. When I approached her to ask if she were lost, I was struck with the realization that it was my mother, fragile and old, but still sitting there with the smile she always had for me. She asked me how I did on the first year of college, and I numbly told her that I received all A's and made it to the dean's list. I told her I was feeling sick, and she told me to go to my room with a worried look on her face. When I got to my room, I sat in my bed and began to remember everything that happened the last 7 years. Brian moved away when he was 13, and my favourite math teacher was found dead and lying on his desk, completely still. He was dead for 8 hours before they found him. Not much happened afterwards. I graduated high school and went to my first year of college. The girl that I had a crush on is now my girlfriend. We haven't had sex yet, but we both decided to wait until we were married. After 4 years, I graduated college and immediately found a wonderful job as an editor. The day I graduated, I got on one knee to propose to the love of my life, and she said yes. We decided that next September would be the best time for us to get married, to get ourselves financially and emotionally prepared. 3 months before our wedding, my fiancée passed away in a hospital. Knowing what would happen and the depression of her dying hit me at once, and I unwillingly started to cry. I then found myself sitting in a coffee shop, drinking a regular iced coffee. I look around to see where I am, and found myself in the city I grew up in. But this time, everything was different. People have started to look lifeless and uninterested with whatever they were doing. A baby was sitting at the table next to me, just staring at me without any type of emotion. The mother took a look at me and said, "What the hell are you looking at?" I was blown away, not by her statement, but by how monotone she said it. I turned around and sat silently. I know that I am now 32, and I befriended James when he moved next door to me. The fact that he bullied me when we were so young did not affect how close we ended up getting. 2 years after we became friends, James was found in his living room with his intestines wrapped around his head and his organs spread around his body. Before I started remembering anything else, I ran to my mother's house to make sure she was still alive. When I was 3 houses away, I saw that my mother was rocking back and forth in her favourite chair outside. I got up to her and tried to hug her, but she pushed me off and resumed rocking. I looked at her, but she refused to turn my way. When I turned her to face me, I fell back onto the ground. Her face was the same, but her lips were placed in a frown that immediately told me she hated everything about me. Her eyes were pure black as she said, "Don't touch me again if you want to keep your hands." It was monotone, but it made me start to shake in fear. I went 3 streets over to my house, and I laid in my bed for the next 3 days, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. After 3 days, I ran out of food, so I went to the store. Again, everyone is expressionless and just going through the motions of shopping. One person was lying on the floor, acting like he was walking. I stared at him for a couple of minutes, thinking of a way to help him, but a lady hit him with a cart and started to drag him away. I decided right then and there to just live my life as if nothing was different. I got another job as a salesman, and nothing happened for the next 5 years. After 5 years, I decided to revisit my mother. I drove there and pulled into a driveway. She was still rocking on a chair, and I walked up to her. I grabbed her shoulder and lifted her head, thinking she just drifted off. But her head fell off her neck and into my hands. I screamed and dropped her head, and it rolled to the side of my foot. I looked down to see that her face is littered with holes all across her face. Maggots were going in and out of the holes, and I turned around to go to my car. I start to cry, and I know that I am about to lose even more of my life. I woke up and found myself in a chair. The chair that is in front of the computer I am posting this on now. To tell you all that I remember everything now. About how I poisoned my math teacher's apple I gave him at 5 p.m. after he tutored me. I don't know why I did it, but I was tired of seeing people I cared about dying all around me. I remember slicing James's stomach open and ripping out his intestines and wrapping them around his face. I took out his organs and spread them all around him. They never found his heart because I buried it beside the tree we would always sit at and drink beers together. I'm just tired of seeing people dying all around me, and I don't know why people have stopped showing emotions. I don't know why my mother was dead for so long without anybody alerting the police or even an ambulance. All I know is that I am not going to lose any more of my life. Please don't get close to me, because I will try my very best to hold onto the last few years I have.